Chapter 4. 3 years after Esteban disappeared, on a lazy spring day, Petey's numbing rhythm of existence exploded. "Which one is Petey Corbin?" hollered a mallish-looking attendant, whisking past the nurse's station. He pushed along a wheelchair with reckless abandon. The wicker chair had a stained oak frame with nicks and scratches from years of abuse. Bicycle tires supported the heavy affair. "Bed number 6, far end in the center," the charge nurse called back. She knew they were coming over from the men's main compound, today to move young Petey. At 11 years of age, he had long ago outgrown infant's ward. Spinning the chair on one wheel, the attendant cruised along the ward as if shopping for groceries. He wrinkled his nose. Even the lye used for cleaning could not mask the wretched sweetness of body waste. "Number 3, number 4, number 5, the white-clad man counted aloud, closing on the desired crib. "Number 6, here we go." Turning the wheelchair sideways, he stripped the sheet off Petey. "Oh, geez, what's this?" he exclaimed, looking down at the contracted body lying in front of him. "Hey," he shouted back across the ward, "I can't haul this in a wheelchair." "What now?" the charge nurse muttered under her breath, pushing back from the desk. "Would you rather carry him?" She headed toward Petey. "He'll fall out before I get to the men's compound." "Here," she said. Deftly she swung Petey onto the chair and pulled a sheet off his crib. Twisting it like a rope, she pried it under his stiff arms and tied it around the wooden back. "If you have him in this chair often, lay the back down and put pillows under him." "This won't become a habit," muttered the attendant. Petey's head flopped forward, and the sheet pulled tightly against his chest, hunching his shoulders up on each side of his ears. Unable to lift his neck, Petey stared at his knees and strained wildly to grasp what was happening. The spoke wheels started rotating faster and faster with a loud clatter. The wood floor slats blurred. Approaching the stairs, the attendant tightened his grip on the handles. Roughly, he lowered the wheelchair down 2 flights of chairs, jolting against each step. Petey winced each time his head bounced. Before Petey fully recovered from the jarring descent, the attendant pushed him outside, bouncing hard over the door threshold. A light breeze greeted them with the smell of fresh-cut grass, lilacs, and honeysuckle. The smells could almost be tasted. Releasing each breath reluctantly, Petey quickly gulped more. He felt the wind before, but only for brief moments as he passed an open window going to his weekly bath. Not since the day Petey had arrived at Warm Springs 9 years ago had he been outside. Now shivers rushed over him. The air flowed across his entire body, tugging at the white sheet covering his legs. It tickled. The sun, long limited to poking only thin beams of light into the ward, bathed the whole world. Even with his head forced forward, Petey squinted and blinked against the dazzling brightness. He smiled, and his eyes watered. For 10 minutes they wound down the long walkway. There seemed to be no limit to distance or space. They rolled and rolled, never stopping. How far could a person go without coming to a wall? Suddenly a loud beep caused Petey to jerk. A big black contraption rattled past, smoke and dust billowing from behind. Twisting his gaze sideways, away from his knees, Petey could see a person sitting in the contraption. He followed its progress as far as his eyes could allow. Blinking in amazement, he grinned, arms flopping wildly. He felt so alive. "Look at that kid. It's a new Packard sedan." "Ain't she a beauty?" the attendant commented. Petey failed to understand what he meant. "In this new ward you're going to meet some real stooges, kid." The attendant's sarcasm flowed thick as if leading a tour group. "We got blacksmiths, boiler makers, gamblers, doctors, prize fighters, even preachers, all under one roof. Yep, this is quite the cultural affair." The walk from infant's ward passed all too quickly. A big red brick building loomed sideways into Petey's sight. The glory of being outside faded quickly. After backing through the front door, the attendant jarred and jolted the wheelchair back up 2 flights of stairs. Each bump knocked away chunks of Petey's enchantment. Corner bed had been readied. With a grunt of relief, the attendant dumped Petey roughly on the bed. "Glad we don't do this every day, kid." Petey eyed the attendant quizzically. For Petey, the trip had been wonderful. Propped against a pillow with his head tilted toward the open room, Petey examined his roommates for the first time. There must have been nearly 50 men, all adults. Nearby, a tall man with no pants and knotty joints stood on a bed shouting, "Repent and you shall be saved. The day of the Lord is at hand. You are sinners, but I have come to deliver you. Everybody pray with me." The man closed his eyes as if the whole room had followed his bidding. Rocking on the bed, unsteady in his self-imposed darkness, the frail man prayed a prayer worn dull by repetition. He stole peeks to steady himself and to check on his imaginary congregation. Petey looked beyond the preacher. Near the window, a gaunt man chewed on his half-devoured shirt. His eyes were as hollow as his ribs. Dozens of patients were scattered about the room, their half-dressed bodies huddled against walls and beds. Most clung to their knees. Some gazed into nothingness, or sat on chairs, heads drooped forward, totally unaware of the madhouse, or even the flies crawling across their necks. Several stared out the dirty windows, their gaze focused a million miles away from Ward 18 of the men's main compound. In the day room at the far end of the ward, 6 patients sat around 2 large wooden tables playing cards or rolling cigarettes. Noise echoed from everywhere and nowhere. One young man with baggy pants drawn tight at the waist paced back and forth, talking earnestly to himself. As if on cue, several patients turned and wandered toward Petey. Curious about the new arrival, they converged as a bond on a helpless 60-pound boy. As a horde on a helpless 60-pound boy. Their questions blazed out like cannon fire. "What's your name? Do you smoke? Did you have an accident? Hi, I'm Joe. I know the president." A few reached out to touch or pinch the new stranger. Petey looked up at the circle of faces with terror in his eyes. Grimacing, he flailed his arms, hitting the spectators and spattering them with like chickens. They stood just beyond Petey's reach, hazarding their remarks. "You hit me, you jerk. I'm going to tell Bob." "What you do that for?" "You're going to get in trouble." "I'm Joe. I know the president." Petey cowered until the group moved away. Why had they brought him to this terrible place? The first night, Petey whimpered and twitched in a fitful sleep. He dreamed of faces circling his bed. Not until dawn did he fall into a peaceful slumber and dream of his walk outside. He felt the wind and smelled the air. He dreamed of happy voices and of loving arms that held him in a place too wonderful to be real. When morning came, Petey awoke slowly, reality diluting his thoughts into vague shadows that retreated from his mind. Suddenly the lights flashed on. "Everybody's up and at 'em. Come on, Johnny, Sam, Joe, let's go at 6 o'clock. An attendant barked his commands as he walked down the aisle, clapping his hands and kicking the beds of delinquent sleepers. He went directly over and started cleaning Petey. "This sure is going to be fun every day," he grumbled, hoisting Petey into the wooden wheelchair. "Have 50 other morons to care for, and the head nurse says she wants you taken out of bed each day." Petey rested awkwardly on 2 pillows. Except for a shirt and a white sheet over his chest, the attendant left Petey naked. Petey gestured wildly for his wheelchair to be moved nearer to the window. "Settle down, dang it," the attendant scolded. "You'll get everybody worked up." Petey quieted but kept pleading with his eyes until the attendant walked away. Helplessly he returned to the unrelenting rhythm of boredom. And the pattern had numbed Petey's mind. At Infants' Ward, here it throbbed even stronger, crippling and paralyzing his existence. Every patient, active or passive, lived with the general din of mayhem that surrounded them. It went unnoticed, like the roar of a waterfall as time passed. Daybreak, sunset, daybreak, sunset. Above Petey's bed a large square heater hung from the high ceiling. In colder months the furnace billowed with a roar that exacted many sleepless nights. While burning it cast a dancing reflection of light across the wall and onto Petey's wheelchair parked beside his bed. The heater, not sufficient for the whole ward, heated excessively directly below the vents. Many nights Petey squirmed and twisted, shoving aside suffocating blankets, only to have the furnace shut down. Soon the air cooled, leaving him shivering without covers. Attendants served food in the day room. Unable to feed himself, most of Petey's contact with others came during mealtime. Lying on his back, he often choked on food. Everyone ignored him, blaming it on his spastic nature. Petey strained once to raise his head so he would not gag. "Hey, fellow, settle down or we'll skip supper," the attendant cautioned. After one missed meal, Petey resigned himself to the choking. Because of the gagging, many mouthfuls of bread, potatoes, and meatloaf ended up all over Petey's wheelchair. Always rushed, the attendants often forgot to shake away crumbs or small chunks of food which fell in the folds of the sheet covering. Petey noticed the small droppings, but had no way of knowing they would soon bring great joy, and one day even greater sorrow.